Okay, so I have a question for you. Do you want to hear something fascinating about the intersection of travel, wellness, and business success? In this episode, I sit down with Sean Hoff, who is the mastermind behind Moniker Partners, and he shares incredible insights about how corporate retreats are really evolving post-pandemic, from transforming company culture through very thoughtful travel experiences to learning why vulnerability within leadership can lead to unexpected breakthroughs. Sean's stories will change really how you think about business travel holistically, maybe travel in general. So if you're curious about how companies are reimagining team building, or you just really love a good tale about turning passion into profit, we love those stories. This episode is absolutely worth your time, hopefully your feedback. Please hit subscribe. Please hit subscribe. And let's explore how the future of work might just involve a few more passport stamps than you might expect. Enjoy. Welcome to the Dean's List, engaging conversations at the intersection of entrepreneurship, artistic expression, and holistic health. Experience wellness in full color, where fashion, beauty, and art blend with body, mind, and soul. Embark on a journey that dresses your aspirations in style, paints your life with beauty, and sculpts your well-being in every dimension. This is the Dean's List, where inspiration is always in session. Welcome to the Dean's List, where we're journeying through the kaleidoscope of wellness, imagination, and enterprise. Today, we're joined by Sean Hoff, the visionary behind Moniker Partners. From orchestrating high-end corporate retreats in the Swiss Alps to creating unforgettable experiences in Thailand, Sean's passion for transformative events knows no bounds. His journey proves that embracing challenges leads to growth, creativity, and new frontiers of adventure. Buckle up, because today's convo is all about blending business, travel, wellness to create experiences that linger long after the journey ends. Hi, Sean.
Hi, Allison.
It's good to see you. All right. So I want to kind of just start it all off. Like the journey that led you to creating Moniker Partners, like what inspired the focus on corporate retreats. Lay it out for us.
Yeah, so I went through like university studying business, and I always kind of just had this idea and path that I would end up working in the world of finance or banking, and I did. But each summer, while my classmates were trying to get internships in like accounting firms or banks or whatever, I found myself drawn to jobs that were abroad. So Canada has this program called SWAP, Students Working Abroad Program. It helps youth under, I believe, 30 years old get working papers to work in a whole bunch of different countries. And so the first time I participated, I worked in London. I moved to London for a summer, and I worked in a hostel as like a reception person. The second year, I started off in Dublin. My original idea was to work in a bar in Temple Bar. I got fired on my first shift for dropping a tray of Guinness on the table of businessmen. And the owner was kind enough to say, well, I've got a sister-in-law at a quieter bar on the west coast of Galway. And so I ended up working in a hotel bar on the west side. And it was an amazing summer. And when I finally wrapped up all of this and I started to work in finance, I just started to realize that like it wasn't really for me. I wasn't in love with what I was doing. I didn't find it as interesting as I had expected.
Mm-hmm.
But the one positive that came out of it was I joined this group that had something called a President's Club trip. And so different organizations have different versions of this. Sometimes it's called like top brokers or top producers, but basically it's like they take the top performers and they reward them with some fabulous trip somewhere. So I squeaked in my first year. I think it was a top 60 and I was probably like number 60 or number 59, but it really opened my eyes to like that there was this world of travel, which I just was completely not aware of beforehand. When I used to travel, I was very much a backpacker. I was no problem staying in hostels with 8 people to a room. And all of a sudden, here we are being flown down to our first trip was to New Orleans. They put us in business class. We were picked up at the airport in these giant pink Hummer limousines, and we all had our own room at the Royal Sonesta on Bourbon Street. And just like every day and every evening just had like more and more and more of these incredible experiences. And so it really opened my eyes to that there was this whole side of the travel industry that I didn't even know about. And it just kept me very motivated. So the next year I did whatever I needed to do to get on the trip. And I also got more involved on the internal side. So they had like a planning team from the bank's representation, and I made sure that I was on it. So we could shape and kind of give feedback to how the trip was coming together. And that kind of like fast forward to the last year, they went to Barcelona. And in Barcelona, that's where I did my master's, and I know that city very, very well. And so I was kind of calling out some of the ideas and the plans that the agency that the bank had hired was suggesting for our trip, and I kind of hijacked it. And so when we were there, like the first day, they had suggested that we go to this restaurant right on Las Ramblas, which is a very popular but very touristy area. And like the restaurant had a menu in like Russian, German, English, French, Spanish. Like this is not the type of restaurant you like welcome and introduce people to Catalan and like Spanish tapas with. And so I kind of told people, I was like, tonight's dinner is not going to be very good. I do know this restaurant around the corner and it's amazing. And I used to organize our class dinners when I was going to school there. And I had like 23 people join me. Needless to say, our managing director of the team was not happy with that because half the restaurant was empty and they all had followed me. And then the next day they were supposed to hop on a double-decker tour bus, the ones with the earphones, the open top ones. And I was like, that is not a good way to explore Barcelona as like on a top producer's trip. And when I had finished my school, I took a job as like a bicycle tour guide just to get some money in the summer. And I called up my old boss and I said, could I borrow about 30 bikes? He said, sure. And so I took a bunch of people from my group on a bike tour of Barcelona, and we ended up at a beach bodega drinking sangria into the sunset. And we completely blew off the rest of the day's plans, which again was not very well received by our boss. But everybody else was having a good time, and they were, giving me great feedback saying that this trip is amazing and I should just plan it next year. So we got back from the trip, and I did get called into my boss's office, and he chewed me out and basically said, do you know how much money you wasted because people weren't showing up to things and they were going on my plan? And I told him, well, of all people, like we work in the markets. And if you're offering something that people don't want, there's no demand there, then maybe you're not offering the right thing. But it also kind of started getting me thinking, where it was like, okay, hey, I enjoy this and I have a knack for this. And I have a bunch of people sending me emails and patting me on the back saying that I made the trip way more exciting and memorable than it would have been. And so that was kind of where the light bulb went off for me. I decided, okay, I think I'm going to quit working here and I'm going to go try and start a company that does that. And let's see how this goes. And so that was 13 years ago. And I did have some friends who kind of worked in the industry. And so I did have some people I could reach out to. And I started showing up to industry networking events. I did a lot of Googling. I found out like there are certain industry associations. One of them was having a holiday party coming up. And I just showed up and I just started asking people and telling people my plan. They all thought I was crazy. But here we are. So it wasn't as crazy as I thought. Or they thought. And we just onboarded 3 more people to bring our team to 21 people across Canada. So things are working out pretty well.
Yeah. So what was the bridge between you starting something, getting your first like paying client, and then like onboarding your first employee?
So the first year, I knew I didn't really have much. I had zero experience in this industry. And I also knew that there was a lot of a learning curve in terms of just like how things work. So
yeah.
I brought on a business partner, and he gave me some money that allowed me to hire my first person. And this person was actually somebody who was in their 50s and kind of served as both a mentor and our first hire. And she really, really guided me through things. Like I had to learn what like a BEO meant, a banquet event order, which is what happens if you have a group of people sitting down for a dinner, you don't order off the menu. You submit the menus and everything and what time it's going to be served and exactly what wines are going to be allowed, way, way in advance. So she kind of walked me through and held my hand through learning the whole and navigating the whole industry and all the slang and all the acronyms and stuff. And then from there, yeah, I mean, the first year or two, we were scrapping for any clients we could get. I remember working with like an MLM company that wanted to do a project or a trip to reward their top producers, but then it fell apart because I don't know, something happened with their finances, which was sketchy, and so we had to like scramble at the last second to fix things. We did trips for wellness people, yoga retreats. We did small companies for 20 people. And it's crazy because like now the groups that we work on are like 5, 6, 700 people. It's a very, very different, obviously, in the scale and the scope of what we're doing. But yeah, you have to start somewhere. So just anybody who I could convince or who would put their trust and faith in me to successfully pull together a trip, that's who we worked with.
So in the beginning, was it just very Canada centric, or did any of those first, smaller businesses take you outside of Canada?
The first few clients were actually based in Canada because it was all basically coming through my network and just kind of hustling friends and family and
Yeah.
somebody's doing something. Now we are probably like 90% of our clients are from the States or Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And that was intentional. Like, I think part of it is what we've seen is like American companies, especially tech companies who's like our bread and butter of clients.
Mm-hmm.
They're in America, they're a lot more, um, they're just more open and willing to like invest in their teams and spend this kind of money and do this kind of thing. In the Canadian tech scene, it's way more conservative. And so sure, they want to do a trip, but their budget's like half the cost, or they're not willing to cover this, or their standards or expectations are lower. So the other side of it is that as a Canadian company, like what we do as a service, like it doesn't matter where we sit. We have people
Right.
who currently live in Mexico. We have people who live and work from all over. And so if we can get American clients to hire us and they're paying us in US dollars, well, at the end of the program, when we converted everything over, we were getting a nice 25 to 35% boost.
Right.
And so that definitely shaped kind of like the angle of who we were trying to target when we started doing our marketing.
Mm-hmm. Do you recall any like obstacles? So outside of obviously just the scrappiness of trying to find the clients, any other like significant things that you had to truly overcome, maybe a learning curve thing, or anything that maybe unlocked something that now you realize was like a surprising opportunity for you?
When we started, there was, I didn't know anything about marketing. I mean, I knew what Google ads were, but I didn't know how to run a campaign. And so I started to teach myself as much as I could, watch YouTube videos, sign up for things like on Coursera or
Yeah.
Udemy, like these like online courses. But it is a very complicated world. A lot of, acronyms and short forms. And so we started to work with agencies and bring them in. And just, I think one thing I learned is don't try to be a master of all aspects of your business. Figure out what you're really good at and then hire or outsource all the other things. The amount
Mm-hmm.
of time it would have taken for me to become like some pro at search engine marketing or SEO was a waste of like where I should be dedicating my focus and my resources. And so that was something I learned early on. And like, I remember just questioning the fees. Like we didn't have too much cash in the first few years, but like agencies approach and they're like, yep, it's going to be like 3,000 a month and we're going to take 10% of your spend. And you're just like, this seems like a lot of money for something that I was doing for free myself. But you also realize like the amount of time that I was spending on it was probably worth $3,000 a month for me not to do it.
Right.
And so, yeah, that was something I've learned very early on, and it's definitely followed through. Is don't worry about trying to be the pro at every single thing.
Yeah.
Just figure out what things you can outsource, and then do your best to find the best that you outsource to.
Amen. That's another one. Yeah. Okay. What does wellness mean to you, Sean?
Wellness is a big thing in our company. We work in an industry where it is very kind of boom and bust. It's a very seasonal business. We have times where things are going slow and quiet, and it's great. And then we have times where, like in the fall season, is usually our busiest. It can get pretty crazy, and our team faces a lot of burnout.
Mm.
And so as much as we wish we could spread these trips out throughout the year, it's just the way it is. And I'm sure there's tons of other industries where, it's seasonal and you just have to suck it up when it gets into the peak season.
Mm-hmm.
But we do spend a lot of time, and just like our attention is on like, how do we make sure that our team isn't feeling burnt out? We've introduced a lot of initiatives to promote work-life balance. So a few of them are, first things first is like, as we're fully remote, everybody can pick their own hours. We don't really care, like if you're working, if you're a morning person, go for it. We have people who work at 7 in the morning. We have some people who start at 10 in the morning. That is a big thing that I think a lot of people don't necessarily appreciate, is like figuring out when you're most productive and letting people
Right.
work through that time.
Mm-hmm.
We have introduced in the summer, specifically when it slows down for us, we've introduced 4-day work weeks, and that has gone an amazing distance to just getting people to kind of just like relax and then actually take advantage of their summer.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the most popular initiatives that we've introduced at the company, and I really encourage other companies, if you haven't tried a 4-day work week as a business owner, I completely understand the fears, the concerns, the objections of like, no, it's crazy, everybody's not going to work, nothing's going to get done. That's not what we've experienced. We actually realize that people, when they feel like they're being treated like adults and
Mm-hmm.
being told you still have to get the same amount of work done, you're just going to have to figure it out in 4 days,
Mm-hmm.
they'll surprise you and they will
Mm-hmm.
get it done. And I can tell you that having Friday off when all your friends and family are working, and having that extra time to do errands during the day, or spend time with your family or kids, it's
Mm-hmm.
amazing. And it does wonders for like mental health. We also do like pulse checks where we check in on people on a quarterly basis. It's a poll that we send out. It can be anonymous, or you can put your name, but we ask questions like, how are you feeling? How's your mental wellness? How's your financial wellness?
Yeah.
How is your work-life balance? Are you finding it a struggle to wrap up work in a given day? And that helps us understand kind of the pulse of like how people on the team are feeling, but
Mm-hmm.
it also gives us an opportunity to like start a dialogue. So if somebody does leave a comment, or they do like have a major obvious red flag that it's like a 2 out of 10 on their work-life balance, and if they put their name, well, we're going to follow up with them.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to reach out to them and just say like, hey, that was concerning. Like, do you want to talk about it? What can we do? What are the steps that we can introduce?
Mm-hmm.
And we've done a whole bunch of other things, but I think for us, it's like understanding that as a company, like we have a pretty high demand job, and there is a lot of high stress when we're on site, and you're responsible for 200-300 people, and their travel plans. It can really weigh down on you. So we also encourage people to take a lot of time off. So if they are in a destination, for example, if they've gone down to Mexico or Thailand with a group, once the group wraps up, we encourage them to extend,
Yeah.
take 3 or 4 days to completely unwrap, go get a massage, like go hang out by the pool and get a drink with a little umbrella in it. And we've supported that by doing something we call the work from wherever subsidy. So every employee on our team has $2,000 per year to cover the cost of working from wherever. They can use it for airfare, accommodation, co-working space, whatever they want. But it isn't to encourage people to say, you know what, I'm going to stay an extra week in Thailand and I'm just going to work from here 9 to 5 day. But it doesn't financially hit them. So it encourages them to take advantage of it.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. So then for you, is wellness like the opposite of burnout? Or like if you were to say the Sean definition of wellness, what would it be?
I think there's two. I think there's definitely mental wellness, and I think there's like more of the physical wellness, the traditional one.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of focus on physical wellness. Like, are you eating right? Are you going to the gym? Are you staying fit?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's definitely a hot topic for the last, I don't know, 10 years.
Yeah.
I think mental wellness has definitely started to become an issue that there's more awareness around in probably,
Mm-hmm.
I'd say, the last five years.
Yeah.
A lot of people kind of attach it to millennials are all about like mental wellness. I actually think it's great because they're drawing attention to this thing, which is extremely important. Our parents' generation, their approach and their concept of like mental wellness and therapy was basically suck it up.
Yeah.
Suck it up. Don't complain. Don't gripe. Don't talk to people. If you encourage somebody or told somebody that you saw a therapist on a regular basis, they look at you like you had like a problem. We openly talk about it in our company. Like, I see a therapist. My wife and I see a therapist preventatively. Like, what's the harm in going and having a conversation with a professional in the room to help you navigate some issues?
Sure.
And I think, like, for me, the mental wellness is probably the most important, because there is a lot of stress that comes with the job. And I think just like making sure that if your mind is like in order and you're not constantly stressed out or just like under duress, then I think the body is going to be a lot easier to get in order.
Yeah.
I think if people are like burnt out or just like at wit's end, it's going to be a lot harder to eat right, stay fit and do other things. So that's where it starts for me.
Yeah. Do you have any like daily wellness non-negotiables? So like things that you must do to get the day going. If the day hasn't, if you haven't paid attention to those things, the day may not go as well as it could have, kind of things.
I used to, and then now we have a toddler, and so my morning rituals have kind of gone a little bit out the window.
Mm-hmm.
No, I used to always start the day, and I picked this up from this organization I'm part of called EO, and it was called the 10-10-10. And it was for the first 10 minutes of your day, don't look at your phone, but listen to something. Listen to a meditation, listen to a podcast, listen to something that kind of gets your brain thinking, but you're not looking at your phone.
Mm-hmm.
The next 10 minutes should be spent on something to do with like physical, whatever, do some push-ups, go for a quick walk, or something just to kind of get your body moving.
Yeah.
And then the next 10 minutes is read something, and it was to read, like, it could be reading the newspaper, it could be reading anything but your work email.
Yeah.
Get your mind trained, or do a crossword, or do some Sudoku. And yeah, so 30 minutes in the morning with a 1.5-year-old, that doesn't exist anymore. But that was a nice little habit that I had picked up for a long time.
I hope that you can pick it up again, Sean, because that
I'm
sounds
sure
like a lovely thing. You will. Okay, so obviously Moniker has organized many, many retreats globally. I want to know how important you think travel is, not just for like a company, but for the individuals within the company.
We tend to focus on companies that are either fully remote or hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
There are tons of companies that have an office, are fully at the office, and still do retreats, but I will talk about the remote and hybrid companies.
Okay.
I think the biggest thing for these types of companies is they can be extremely productive. And I mean, we can dive into the whole argument of like remote versus in office. But one thing that does still not exist when you are in a fully remote or hybrid environment is that sense of human connection and that sense of community, of feeling that you actually have this like group of people that you belong with or that you are close with at your place of work, that is more than just a colleague whose name and tiny little profile icon on their Slack name, that you never actually see or meet them or get to know them and understand, like, what's their family like? Where do they grow up? Like, what makes them tick? So we're big proponents of this. And we have a lot of clients who like are doing their first retreat with us, and the CEO is usually a little hesitant. It seems like a lot of money. 100% it is. But what happens is, like, they get on site, and most of our retreats are a pretty equal blend between doing some work in the morning, doing some like team related stuff. It could be team building. It could be like doing a workshop. Last year, Radical Candor was all the rage. And so we had a lot of Radical Candor workshop people come in and like lead a 4-hour afternoon session. And then a lot of times just allocated to just hanging out. And you'd be surprised at how much things can happen in those spaces where there is no programming, there is no agenda that actually will end up helping and benefiting the company.
Mm-hmm.
So anecdotally, and we started to try to track this, like, could we put a number, a trackable, tangible number on what the value of hosting a retreat is? What is the ROI of spending money on a retreat where you can't measure it against what it costs the same way, for example, as those like President's Club trips that I used to be on. For us, there was a sales target. If we hit that sales target, we went on the trip. For them, it was very black and white. Here's what it cost us. Here's what it brought in for us. It was easy to measure. But on team retreats, it's not as easy. But what we started to pick up anecdotally was there's some significant patterns and trends that emerge. Companies who do retreats for us, in our experience, they have significantly lower turnover.
Yeah.
So every company can argue like what is the value of it, but like companies that get together and like spend time together will see less people leave.
Yep.
And I think a big reason for that is because they do feel that sense of connection and community with the people. And it's harder. It's easy to leave a job. It's harder to leave your job if you're very close now with like the 3 or 4 people on your team that like you've come to really, connect with.
Yeah.
There's also higher tenure. And so companies that tend to meet frequently or meet up, even if it's just once a year, people tend to stay at these they go hand in hand with the lower turnover, but like you'll see on average that the length of time that employees have stayed at these companies is significantly higher than ones who don't seem to value or invest in these kind of things.
Yep.
I've anecdotally seen in post-trip surveys, people say comments like, I was contemplating whether or not I was going to stay at company because I have another offer. But after spending the week with this gang of like crazy kooks, I know I will never leave.
Yeah.
And we pass those comments straight on to the CEO. Obviously, we remove the name, or I think that one was anonymous. But we see that a lot, is where like people are like on the fence about leaving. It might be for another offer. It might just be because they're just not sure that this is like still has their passion anymore. But then they go on these retreats and they get re-inspired. It could be
Right.
re-inspired by the CEO getting up in front of the crowd and basically like getting them reinvigorated about what the mission is. Or
Yeah.
it could be like getting together with some of their colleagues and like starting to brainstorm ideas and new projects and hackathons of like what they could work on that would really actually get them interested. There's a lot of intangible benefits that I think are just so much more justifiable for why these companies in the long run will outperform companies that just don't seem to care about this stuff.
Amen. What do you think, or I guess, how do you think the travel that you've done has shaped your perspective on what wellness is?
To your point, I think there's been a huge change since post-COVID.
Okay.
Previously, our retreats were a lot more like work hard, play hard focused. So pre-2020, like companies would go, they'd work like a 6-7 hour day. And then after that, they would like go and just like rage on the beach party or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
After COVID, and I don't know if I attribute this to COVID or whatever it might be, but all of a sudden, like we started seeing like our clients were coming to us and saying, can we make sure that we have like a meditation in the morning? Can we make sure that we have like a yoga time set aside at 4 p.m.? The CEO would like to lead a group on like a morning nature walk. Our CMO would like to walk a group through Wim Hof ice cold bath breathwork session. Can you see if the hotel can get us like 10 tubs of ice? And so we've seen all this like start to be incorporated into the program. It's definitely become more popular and common. And so that's one thing, just this like trend towards incorporating this stuff into the agenda.
Yeah.
And then the second side of it is as well is like previously groups liked to get together close to the action. So like they wouldn't necessarily stay in like downtown Chicago, but they'd like to be like just a little bit outside so that they could go in for a day, or that it would only be like a 20-minute bus ride to go check out something in the city.
Yeah.
Post, what we've seen is groups are really like their priority when when we start talking about destinations and what they're looking for, their priority is we want to find a place that is like remote, like in the middle of nowhere, nature, outdoorsy. It doesn't matter if it's a 90-minute or a 2-hour drive after you land. Like they want these places that are way more kind of like serene in nature. And I think that it's great. It does change the dynamic of the retreat, the trip together. But in terms of destinations, that's definitely been something we picked up on.
So do you find now that like, if a company comes to you and is saying, we just want to do work, do you find it's easier because you have more case studies on this now to kind of convince a CEO that's like super just focused on, yeah, sure, I'll send everybody to Switzerland, but I want, it to be 80% we're doing work on site and 20% fun. Now that you have more data behind you, it's easier to say, that's not what we recommend.
Yes. And I have this conversation quite often where it's like, well, they're being paid. This is a work week. How come we're not expecting the same 8 hours a day out of them? And it's like, dude, if that's what you want to do, then like, I don't think you need to fly everybody to Switzerland to do this. Like you can just do this at home. Host a virtual retreat. Have 1 or 2 sessions where you do something, but don't waste everybody's time flying them over there just so you can have dinner together.
Yes.
We have sample templates where we show people, and like I think the ideal mix for us is basically 40, 20, 20, where it's like 40% of your time is doing work. And that is like from 9 a.m. to about 12:30 in the mornings. So each morning, it's a great time to do work. People are focused. They wake up. We also recommend leaving about 20% of your time for co-working. Yes, you are working, but it's unstructured. It's just basically like, hey, we've converted this ballroom over there into a co-working space. So there's just like tons and tons of tables with power cords and making sure that we've like boosted the Wi-Fi so people can go hang out there. They can hang out in the lobby, but it's just like to stay on top of work and keep the company going, because it is quite common if we're taking an entire company offline for a week, like, things start to go a little bit off the rails.
Yeah.
So carving out a dedicated time where people will kind of know, okay, this is the time when I'm supposed to like get caught up on stuff. So they're not stressed out trying to figure it out in their leisure time or like just before the morning starts, before breakfast.
Right.
20% goes towards like team building, specifically team building, like doing like a scavenger hunt, or like our team, we just got back from Prince Edward Island and we did a murder mystery one evening, but we were in teams of 5 and it was really fun to work with our teams and try to, go through like who done it.
Yeah.
That's still team building. It's not the traditional drum circles or trust falls. Like we try to find things that are still fun and interesting, get you working with your team.
Yeah.
And then the last 20% is just unscheduled free time. Just let people just enjoy leisure.
Yeah. Like where you are. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And like the evenings, we don't even count. Like in the evenings, you're going to have dinner together. So it's more from like between 9 and 5. Like that's kind of the good way to split it up.
So do you think that travel helps people's mental health?
That's a very good question. I mean, it's an open-ended question because there's tons of different types of travel and there's tons of different
True.
destinations. Like if you're going to Bali for a 2-week yoga retreat, that's probably going to help your mental health. If you're flying to Vegas for a 5-day conference, that's probably not going to help you. No, I think in general, travel has a magical power of making people revisit their perspective on things, revisit their pace of life. Like one thing I absolutely love about traveling to Europe, for example, is, and Italy is one of my favorite countries as well. It's like when I go to Italy, I am infuriated at how long it takes somebody to take my order at a barista or at a restaurant. But then I also realize this is my like inner Torontonian go person working. And it's like after day 2, day 3, who cares if we finished our dinner and we've been sitting here for 30 minutes and we're just having coffees at this point. Like it forces you to reassess, like this is normal. This is normal. This is what life should be like. And just to see how other people walk. Like I tend to be a fast walker. And if I'm on the sidewalk and I see people walking in front of me slowly, like my first initial reaction is like, get out of the way. But you go to some countries and you start to realize it's like, I'm the crazy one. Like these people are out for a stroll. They're not going from point A to point B as fast and efficiently as possible. They're out for a stroll to enjoy the fresh air, to enjoy the sunshine, to just be outdoors.
Yeah.
And I love that about travel. And it also introduces you to like different things, like not just like different cuisine and a way to eat. It can be, I remember my first trip when I went to Thailand, just like opening my eyes, just how completely like woven into their daily lives, like religion is tied in, or like just wellness, how everything is like just the way people treat people. It's amazing. And so, I come back to Canada, which is very similar to the United States. And I just wish we could pick up a few of those lessons about how to treat strangers and people in your day-to-day life.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Okay. So I know I can speak to this. I can be a case study. Many high profile clients, global. Obviously, you create some very impactful experiences. I mean, the stories that I can share are pretty vast. So are there any, besides me, are there any like memorable stories for you of a retreat that you all did that really led to like a positive transformation for a company? Or it could conversely, like maybe someone within the company approached you and said, you know, I mean, you shared, someone said, I would have left the company had I not had this week together. So that's something. But any others where it was really, you know, like you felt it in your bones, Sean, of like, you know, wow, I just helped create something pretty magical.
There was a company that was like VC backed, funded, doing, you know, rocket ship growth. And um, their CEO was very good at keeping people excited, motivated, and rah, 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 kind of get the crowd going. But it also, at the same time, like, they were going, this is in 2022 and 2023, they were going through some tough times. They're going through a struggle. And 2023 hit and they laid off something like 20 or 30% of their workforce. And we were the ones who were like, they said to us, like, we haven't told the team yet, but just an FYI, we're only going to need like 70% of the rooms that we initially booked. Can you go figure that out? I was like, oh, what's going on? And they said, well, you know, we've come on tough times and we have to make some cuts to keep this thing stable. And I said, I remember having a conversation with the CEO and I said, it's no problem for us to figure the rooms out and we can find ways to cut costs, but have you let your team know? Because they're going to find out. Like, they're going to start to figure out that you're planning 5 months from now to be 70% of the company you are today. Like, have you gotten ahead of that? And he's like, no, I was thinking that, you know, we would make the cut, one cut, deep cut, and we would do it very close to the retreat so that way, like, we could just get ahead of it on site. And I said, no, I really don't think that's the way to do it, but that's just my 2 cents. And anyways, the conversation kind of left. And then he called me a week later. He's like, hey, I can't stop thinking about what we talked about. Can we dive into that again? I said, yeah. He goes, look, I like the way you lead your team, transparency and honesty and stuff, but like, I'm not used to that. I'm not that guy. I've always been the rah guy. And I said, okay, well, maybe your team would actually appreciate this time. So anyways, he ended up having a town hall, and basically telling his team that for the first time, after denying it and kind of just pretending that this wasn't an issue, he ended up telling his team openly that they were facing some tough times, that there would likely be cuts. He didn't have an answer. He didn't know what the solution at the end of the horizon looked like, and he was scared. He admitted to his team that he was, for the first time, in a position where he didn't have 100% optimism about what the future of the company was. And he was expecting people to just like go up in arms and leave and start looking for new jobs. And the opposite happened. People immediately reached out afterwards. They had this like poll that followed up all their town halls, and people were overwhelmingly showing support about how he was being vulnerable, about how he's also human, that he was saying like, hey, listen, this isn't going as I planned and I don't have an answer. We don't always have the answer. And I hope people will be along for the ride. And what happened was, sure enough, they did go through the layoffs, and they did them a little bit sooner than what he had planned, which I recommended. I think doing layoffs just before a trip, I mean, you're just messing with people's lives. Like, they had planned to go somewhere and all of a sudden you cancel it. And then on site, he said that the amount of support and people coming up, he thought people were going to be basically like, you know, torches and mobs saying, how dare you lead us to this? Like, what's happening with the company? And he actually said he was nervous about attending his own company's retreat.
Wow.
And what he said was, what happened on site was the team that was there, came, like, people were giving him hugs. People were crying in like support, saying to this person, like, I can't imagine how hard the last 6 months have been for you. And I can't imagine how hard, you know, this must be to see something that you've built not going as well as you planned. And he said that this group of people on site, like, they, instead of just like sitting there in the audience and saying, tell me what I need to do to get us where we need to go, people took the time to say, like, okay, we are in this together now. What are we going to do to overcome this challenge? And they had these little like side hackathons where people would like go off into a room. They would just come up to our team and say, can we just get a room for like 20 people for the next 2 hours? And they would go off and they would come back to the CEO with ideas, new products, new revenue models. And they're like, here's what we think we can do to help save this company. And I remember coming to me, started crying, and he was just like, I would have never imagined that this would have been the outcome from me telling people the truth.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, because you've shown them that you're human, and you've shown them that like you're not hiding anything here. And it was a really like, made the hairs on your arms stand up. It was such a warm moment. But I remember that company, like he went into it nervous about his own retreat and nervous about the future of his company. And he came out of the retreat saying, we're going to fucking crush this. We are going to absolutely overcome this.
Yeah.
And it was just because he brought it up.
Yeah. Well, so then you're not only the purveyor of travel, you're also like the purveyor of like, leadership motivation now, Sean. I like it. It's like you're going to expand outward. Have there been any surprises for you? Like anything that maybe your mindset has shifted a bit in the course of time that you've been running the company, and how you approach business or leadership, or just anything that has just surprised you in reflection?
So I've been running the company now for just about 12 years. And I'll say that as the company has grown, your problems actually get bigger, even though you're able to hire more people to do certain tasks or take things off your plate. Like I used to do operations. Now we have somebody who's in charge of operating. We actually have like 15 people in charge of operations. I used to do all the proposals and stuff, and now we have a team of 4 people who do proposals.
Yeah.
But your problems change, and like you as a leader need to evolve with those changes.
Right.
I have a friend who's in this group, and he has like a 90-person company, and I told him, oof, 90 people, that would stress me out. Like I can't even imagine. I manage 21 people. I can't even imagine managing 90 people. He says, neither could I. I said, what do you mean? And he says, listen, I started out with 2. And then only when I was ready to manage 10 did we have 10.
Right.
And then we had 20 people, and I wasn't ready to manage 20 people. And so I lost a few people. And it took me a while to like develop my skills. And eventually I was like a capable manager of being able to lead a team of 20, and then 40, and then 50, and then 60, and then so on and so on. So that's something I've kind of like is learned to give myself some grace and patience, and that there is no magic textbook on how to build a company, how to lead a team. I mean, you can go through the business section in any bookstore, and there's 100 books on how to lead and how to be a manager. But at the end of the day, like you have to learn for yourself, and you have to, and what is in one book isn't going to necessarily apply to your specific group of humans in your company. And that's another thing that I've picked up on is like right now we have 21 very individual, unique personalities in our room. And my style of leadership is a little bit different for each one of those. I have colleagues of mine who I can be very direct with. If something's not going well, I can call it out. I can say, this isn't up to your standards. I know you can do better. Fix it. And I have other colleagues that if I said that to them, they would call me an asshole and they would probably like hang up on me. And so you learn that you have to kind of tailor your approach and like your message depending on who you're speaking to. And I will say as well is like we have a very like people first philosophy at our company. And I think it has allowed us to grow much faster and bigger than a lot of our competition is because people who work with us, like they're really genuinely happy to be here. And they feel valued by the company because of all those things that I was talking about we do. And I truly believe that like when people feel genuinely valued and happy, they're going to give you better work than if it's just a paycheck to them.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
So I learned that a long time ago. Thankfully, like it's definitely led the way that we manage. I'd say like in a given year, I'd say probably like, well, outside of salary, like 30% of our net profit goes towards our people in terms of like initiatives, bonuses, benefits, and whatever. And that's way higher. Like if we had debt or we had VCs, they would be calling a lot of that into question how much we spend on our people. But we also like we haven't had someone leave in 6 years voluntarily.
It's very impressive. It's very
pretty
impressive.
Remarkable.
Okay, I want to do a quick fire, and then there's only a couple questions left. Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So quick fire. First thing that comes to mind. Okay. Early bird or night owl?
Night owl.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Favorite color?
Orange.
First paying job that you ever had.
Camp counselor.
Favorite cuisine.
Italian.
Favorite band or singer.
Oh, that's a tough one. Oh, it changes with the season. Like in the fall, it's all folk music. It's like I'm
Oh,
on one of the Spotify like fall leaves playlists or whatever.
I
When
love
it's
it.
summer and spring, it's like pop and happy music.
Yeah,
In the
okay.
winter, I listen to a lot of like classical and jazz during work. Like
Okay.
it totally changes. I honestly couldn't name a favorite artist.
No, I love it. Okay, what's this? Well, I think you just said it, or you said it previously. Favorite country that you've traveled to?
I would have to say Italy.
Yeah,
It's got the perfect combination of history, cuisine, people, hospitality, everything,
I do love.
architecture.
I think I'm with you on that one, Sean. What's the one app on your phone that you cannot live without?
Reddit.
What's the one word that you would use to describe your business journey?
Resilient.
If you could have any entrepreneur as a mentor for a day, who would it be?
Richard Branson.
Cool. That was actually, I feel like, was it my last episode or the one before that? They said Richard Branson too, the CEO of Purity Coffee.
He has a remarkable story, and the
Oh,
way he
yeah.
leads
Oh,
his
yeah.
companies is very unique.
He's awesome. What is a book that has significantly influenced your mindset?
Most recently, No Rules Rules by Reed Hastings and Susan Reed. It's the story of Netflix. It's written by the CEO and this woman, and it just basically talks about how his philosophy towards leadership and management and running the company has allowed them to go from maybe being a $50 million buyout by Blockbuster to being like this juggernaut in every country making
Yeah.
content. Like they've completely changed the landscape of streaming. They are the go-to. It's a very interesting book.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Pick it up. Besides Moniker, what is another favorite business that you want to hype or shout out?
I know a lot of travel companies,
Uh-huh.
and that's what I pay attention to a lot too. And I've seen a lot of really interesting startups in the last like year or two in the travel space.
Okay.
There are companies that like they've started up specifically for like women to travel to destinations that aren't normally like friendly, or
Oh,
LGBTQ plus to go travel to countries where they aren't normally LGBTQ friendly, but they curate itineraries and the hotels and the restaurants that are, and they just make travel accessible for everyone.
cool.
And I find those very, very fascinating.
If you could instantly acquire one new skill instantly, what would it be?
More languages.
Ooh, if you could time travel to any period in history, which era would you visit?
The Renaissance in Florence.
Okay. And if you weren't doing what you're doing for Moniker, like, and you had to be doing something else, what would it be?
Designing hotel lobbies.
Ooh, that's cool. What are your like top 5 travel recommendations for anyone that's looking to experience something new, or just like anything for someone that maybe doesn't travel as much as you? Like what are the Sean like top 5 things pay attention to this when you're traveling?
So I usually like I plan trips for a living, down to the last minute detail.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I travel on my own, I intentionally don't plan a lot. I'll have like one thing in a given day where I will do, but for the most part, I don't plan where I'm going to dinner. I know there's a lot of people out there that will map out based on Instagram and whatever recommendations exactly where they're having breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I go the exact opposite. I usually have this thing where I'll walk out the hotel and I'll take a right and then I'll take a left and then I'll just keep going in that direction until I find something that looks interesting, that looks populated by locals. And I think like embrace the spontaneity and stop following Instagram or whatever website tells you this is where you should eat. This is the best restaurant,
Yeah.
because more often than not, they're not.
Yeah.
And it's okay to have an 8 out of 10 meal. It's like, it's not the end of the world. And I love that. Like I've discovered so many amazing places off the beaten path by just like going for a stroll. I always love to strike up conversations with like strangers and locals. And the
Yeah.
best way to do that is hanging out,
We're
usually
there.
in like a local bakery or a cafe. And you just
Yeah.
like awkwardly talk to someone next to you, like, "Sprechen Sie English?" And then if they're like, "Yes, I speak English," you're like, "I'm visiting from Canada. I have a question for you. Where is your favorite Italian restaurant in Berlin.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, oh, and they love it. They love being asked for their opinion, and they love that this person from Canada, and they're like, wait, why Italian? But whatever it might be. Or I might ask a German where the best place to get a ham hock is.
Yeah.
And I love starting that conversation. Why are you visiting? Oh, I have friends, I have family in Canada, and it just goes back and forth. So I always try to strike up conversations.
Yep.
I've also just don't skimp on where you stay.
Oh yeah.
It should be a place where you like enjoy. Like I love nice hotels. I love hanging out in lobbies. I love lobby bars more than I like going to other bars. And so I don't skip on things. There's people on my team who like will stay like Airbnb shared room. Like they'll have a room in somebody else's apartment. I find that so bizarre. No,
I could do it.
I definitely splurge when I go where I stay.
Yeah.
And then also, there's nothing wrong with revisiting your favorites. I've been to Italy like 15 times, and I keep discovering new things. Or sometimes I go and I do the exact same things I did the last time because it was just that good.
Yeah.
And I think there's this like subconscious need to like scratch off new destinations, and every single time you travel, like you're getting a badge of honor or stamp on your passport. That's okay, but there's nothing wrong with going back to Florence for time number 10 because there's so much more to discover.
Yeah. I think that was 4, but I'll take 4. That actually reminds me, like, I look forward to going back to this pizzeria in Naples. Like I cherished meeting the owners and like all that stuff. And it would delight me so much to like go back and like have another convo with them. Okay. 2 more questions, Sean. Looking ahead for Moniker, what lies ahead?
We set an ambitious goal internally we set it in 2022, and it was a 3-year kind of North Star goal that we've been working towards. At the end of 2025, we will see. And so if that happens, it will be kind of like, okay, this is the result and culmination of a lot of years of post-pandemic travel company effort.
Yep.
And then after that, I don't know, we have to figure out what the new goal is.
Maybe 20 more people on the team.
Maybe, yeah. Well, I enjoy a small company.
Yeah. No, okay. All right. And then what advice would you give to someone looking to start a business?
It takes time, and give yourself grace. I think there's too many, like I speak at local colleges and I speak to students, and I hear too often, like they have this thing that like, obviously if I start a company, I'm going to be $1 billion IPO within like 5 years, like obviously. And it's just like, no, you won't. And it's the same thing as everybody who like, if you read about the story of like Jeff Bezos or most billionaires, they grinded for like 5-10 years with no hope that it was going to pan out. You just have to persevere. You have to have resilience. You just have to grind through it. You realistically aren't going to make $1 million until your 10th year in a business. And that is okay. And I have to like talk to a lot of young kids who see on TikTok that there's this like 29-year-old who has like 3 Lamborghinis and flies in a private jet. And I'm like, that could be real. It could not be real. It also, if it is real, is 1 in literally a billion.
Yeah.
So let's focus on the kid who started the college painting business or the landscaping business, who hustled it for 5-6 years and then just sold his company to a bigger company for $2 million. Like that is your hero. That's who you should be looking up to.
I love that. So, all right. How does everyone find you if they need to?
You can find us on our website, monikerpartners.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn, Sean Hoff.
Sean, I appreciate you. And always, Moniker will be on the Dean's List.
Thank you, Allison. I had a really good time.
All right. I'll talk to you soon. And thank you all for tuning into this episode of the Dean's List. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform to stay updated, and follow us on Instagram at official_Dean's List and YouTube at It's Official Dean's List. I'm your host, Allison Dean. Until next time.